Separation and divorce is one of the most complex scenarios we come across in real estate. And I speak not only as a 15-year real estate agent licensed in both Kansas and Missouri, but also as someone who has gone through the separation and divorce process personally. I'm creating this episode today because I think there's valuable things when you're in this situation and not always a lot of people to help, and time is often of the essence. So let's start with pace. Every separation and divorce moves forward at its own pace and what makes sense for that couple. And what I mean by that is sometimes it might be where you determine that cash flow is tight and it would be in your best interest to make wise decisions and move quickly with the sale of an asset or getting parties all homed into different places quickly. The other thing about pace is sometimes it also takes time and it makes sense to slow the process down. And I encourage you to consider what pace makes sense for the rehousing of everyone and determining how to handle one of your biggest assets, your home. And yet there's many steps that we can do to help give you information so that during that process, even if it's not quick and it's a slow process, you're able to move forward informed and at a good pace that makes sense and everyone's comfortable with. One other thing I would say is just because you meet with myself or another real estate professional doesn't mean you have to make a decision right now. All it means is that you've got the data and the information to make a wise decision. All right, so the next and obvious thing is finding a value for your home. And a lot of times you might hop on the internet and try to guesstimate at what that might be. Bringing in myself as a professional, I can help give you an idea of what it is in its current state today, and then what options you would have for small improvements to really maximize that home value. And that is where I'm bringing spreadsheets and we're looking at what timing it might be hitting the market and determining what that base value is. You can then take that into negotiation and or for understanding what your cash flow or your proceeds might be to help determine your own individual decisions moving forward. The next thing that we often will talk about is retaining the property. Does it make sense for one party to retain the property, either short-term or long-term? So we walk through what that looks like as far as the current value, but also in a long-term sense. I'm gonna, any party that would be interested in that, we're gonna look at carrying cost, long-term maintenance cost, and making sure that it is not only a good financial decision for you moving forward, but also an emotional decision moving forward. Again, I'm a real estate agent that has been in your shoes, and oftentimes it is one in which emotions go very high, and we need someone to help guide us through our decisions and making sure that, especially if you're going through a divorce and at that point you're making a lot of decisions solo when you used to have someone to bounce things off of. I get to be that resource for both parties. The other thing I would say about retaining the property, and this is an advice of my attorney that I was very grateful for. Oftentimes people will say, you know what, we've been living under the same roof for a bit, but it's reached the point where it's going to be best for everybody that we're no longer under the same roof. And if children are involved, the term that she welcomed or opened me up to was nesting. And if you haven't heard of nesting before, it's where the parties may go rent another apartment elsewhere or somewhere that is a temporary place, and or they move back and forth between the home on their parenting time. So if parent A has the children, they're in the home while parent B is staying either with friends or in that rented home. And then when it's parent B's turn to have family or parenting time, then they're in the home with the children and parent A goes to the apartment or stays with family and friends. This has a great purpose, or multiple great purposes, one of which it gives those children some consistency during this time of change. Another bit, and it was one that I think I underestimated early on, is as a solo parenting for the first time and having that parenting time where you are 100% by yourself during that time, it was great to have that nesting apartment to go and recoup and get some air during that time when you're also making a lot of really important decisions. Finally though, and this is the point that my attorney made, is if you don't know from day one or at that point if you are going to have one party for sure retaining the property or not, it might be where you would need to sell it, you're not giving up access to that property. And so by going and doing something of a nesting piece, you're going to have access to the property to help make sure that if repairs need to be made prior to listing the property or staging needs to take place to make sure you're maximizing your asset when you go to sell, you have the ability to still access the property. If you just move out and one party stays in the home, then it becomes a lot more difficult, and sometimes motivation is lost for that property or for that partner to go ahead and sell the property. So do consider nesting, and that if it's something that you haven't considered before. All right. So the next thing is, if we do decide it's in your best interest to sell the property, then it would be where we go into all the normal things we would do in a real estate transaction to maximize that asset. So I'm helping you again with getting those last little projects done and improvements done to maximize the asset, staging information, photos, all of the things are the same that you would receive in any other real estate sale. The only difference might very well be is that I'm having a conversation with each of you separately if need be, or we're working as a team. But a lot of times too, I can help communicate between all parties. The other part with maximizing a sale and in that sale transaction is often sometimes people are going to be purchasing something else, and I'm able to help that individual with communicating back what the need is for the sale of this property to help make sure everything flows properly into the purchase of another property, or that everything flows properly into a move-in date on a rental property. So that really is a great way that we're not only are we maximizing with all the other traditional ways we maximize the sale, but we're also making sure everybody's getting their goals and their needs meted as they progress. Finally, the other thing I would say is there's many other different small steps forward that you take in this process of separation, divorce, and selling a big asset. And what I mean by that is if it's determining and dividing up personal property, if there's assistance needed there, that's something I can help navigate and communicate for you. And then again, helping everyone move into what new home they may need and the logistics of that. So again, I encourage, if you yourself are considering a separation or divorce, a confidential conversation with me. I'm more than happy to have it with you by phone or setting up a coffee sometime to meet. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You're always welcome to reach me in a DM or by phone at 816-674-2627. Or find me an email at esadyKC@gmail.com. Again, the sooner you can get me involved, the sooner you're going to have a lot of information to be able to move forward wisely and in a smooth way. Have a great day.